The chamber was alive with the hum of alien voices, a chaotic symphony of clicks, hisses, and guttural tones echoing under the towering crystalline domes of the Galactic Council Hall. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy had gathered, their vibrant forms seated in floating pods that drifted across the immense space. At the center, an imposing Velker, cloaked in a shimmering mantle of gold and black, stood in his pod. High Chancellor Karath addressed the assembly with practiced arrogance. "We waste precious cycles," he boomed, his voice a low, resonant growl. "These so-called humans are nothing but an irritation, a primitive infestation on the galactic fringe. They lack the strength, intellect, or technology to pose any threat to the Velker Dominion, or to this council." Scattered murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Velker, after all, were the most advanced species in the known galaxy, their fleets vast and their weapons unrivaled. Few dared challenge them openly. Few, except for the lone human representative standing tall in her simple gray uniform at the periphery of the chamber. Captain Alina Thorne's face remained composed, though her fists clenched behind her back. The Velker's dismissal was expected but no less infuriating. She stepped forward as her voice cut through the din with the precision of a blade. "High Chancellor Karath, your confidence in your fleet is impressive. But your ignorance blinds you to the lessons of history." Her words carried a calm yet dangerous edge. The hall fell silent, save for the faint hum of the pod's shifting position to better observe her. Karatha's golden eyes narrowed. "Speak plainly, human, if you dare." Alina smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Every great power has underestimated a smaller one at its peril. Humanity's strength does not lie in grand fleets or ancient technologies. It lies in our adaptability, our ingenuity, and our determination to survive, qualities the Dominion has clearly failed to grasp." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the delegates. Karath leaned forward, his claws curling over the edge of his pod. "Are you threatening the Dominion?" "Not at all," Alina replied smoothly. "I am warning you. You see us as an infestation, an inconvenience. But humans have a saying, even a cornered rat will bite. If you attack us, you will regret it." Karatha's laughter rang out, a harsh, guttural bark. "And how will your tiny species accomplish such a feat? Your colonies are scattered, your fleets laughably small. Do you plan to throw sticks and stones at our warships?" There was scattered laughter, but Alina didn't flinch. Instead, she locked eyes with Karath and held his gaze with quiet intensity. "Perhaps you should ask the Aurelians," she said softly. The mention of the Aurelians sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. The insected species had once boasted a fleet rivaling that of the Velkers, until they made the mistake of invading a human colony a decade earlier. Details of the humans' counterattack were murky, but the result was indisputable. The Aurelians had retreated, their fleet decimated and their influence shattered. Karatha's confident sneer faltered for just a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Old news. The Aurelians were fools, unprepared for a prolonged conflict. We are not so weak." Alina's eyes glinted. "Neither are we." Before Karath could respond, a new voice chimed in, high and melodic. "The Council has already advised restraint." The speaker was Counselor Azira, a luminous being of flowing, translucent tendrils. She regarded Karath with serene disapproval. "Humanity has proven resourceful, if nothing else. Perhaps the Dominion would do well to heed the Council's counsel." Karatha's claws scraped against his pod's edge, a low growl rumbling from his throat. "The Dominion bows to no one. Humanity's fate is sealed. We will demonstrate what becomes of insolence." Azira sighed, her glow dimming slightly. "Then the consequences are yours to bear." Karath turned his attention back to Alina, his expression a mask of disdain. "Mark my words, human, your species will be extinguished. And when your ashes scatter across the stars, it will be a lesson to all who dare defy us." With a sharp gesture, he activated his pod's propulsion, sending it streaking toward the exit. Other Velker delegates followed, their departure leaving a tense silence in their wake. Alina stood motionless, her pulse pounding in her ears. She had done all she could to warn them. Now, humanity would have to prepare for the storm. As the council session adjourned, Azira drifted toward Elena, her tendrils flickering faintly. You spoke well, Captain Thorne. But I fear the Velkers will not listen until they are taught the hard way. Elena's lips tightened into a grim line. They'll listen when we make them. Back on Earth, Elena convened with the United Defense Coalition, a gathering of humanity's finest minds in strategy, science, and warfare. The news of the Velkers' imminent attack galvanized the room, but fear was palpable. They'll be here in days, General Hargrave announced, his voice gravelly. Our outer colonies won't stand a chance. They don't have to, Elena interjected. The room turned to her, their expressions questioning but hopeful. The Velkers expect us to fight conventionally, to match their fleets head-on. We won't. Instead, we'll fight the way we always have, unpredictably. What's the plan? Someone asked. Elena's gaze swept the room, her voice steady and resolute. We'll make their arrogance their downfall. She laid out the strategy: guerrilla tactics, cyber warfare, and leveraging every resource at humanity's disposal. Engineers would hijack Velker communications, sowing chaos in their ranks. Scientists would devise countermeasures to their biological weapons. Small, mobile strike teams would target supply lines and critical infrastructure, forcing the Velkers to spread themselves thin. This won't be easy, Elena concluded. But we've faced impossible odds before. We adapt. We survive. And we win. A murmur of determination spread through the room. Humanity had always thrived in adversity, and now, against the galaxy's most formidable power, they would do so again. As preparations began, Elena allowed herself a moment of reflection. She gazed out at the distant stars, her thoughts a mix of fear and resolve. The Velkers thought humanity was an insignificant pest, but they had underestimated the one thing that truly defined the human spirit: the refusal to surrender. They're coming, she whispered to herself. And they'll regret it. The Velker fleet arrived with a precision that bordered on arrogance, their colossal warships casting ominous shadows over the outer colonies of humanity. Sleek and imposing, their vessels hummed with energy, their weaponry poised to strike. The Dominion's Admiral Vikos observed from the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Wrath, his expression one of cold satisfaction. This was not a battle, it was an exhibition of power. The humans, primitive as they were, would crumble in days. Deploy the first wave, he ordered, his voice calm but sharp. Let them see the might of the Dominion. Across the colonies, alarms blared as the Velkers descended. On the barren mining world of Ganymede 7, workers abandoned their rigs and rushed for the underground bunkers. Above them, human ships scrambled to engage the invaders, their movements frantic against the precise formations of the Velkers. The first skirmish was brief and brutal. Human defenses faltered, their ships obliterated with chilling efficiency. It was exactly as Vikos had anticipated. But as he reviewed the tactical readouts, a faint anomaly caught his attention. A handful of human escape pods had ejected moments before their ships were destroyed, scattering into the asteroid field nearby. He frowned, his golden eyes narrowing. Unusual, he muttered. Humans fleeing rather than fighting to the death. Cowards, perhaps. Or something else. On the surface of Ganymede 7, Captain Elena Thorne watched the chaos unfold on a tactical display inside the command bunker. Her team, a mix of engineers, hackers, and soldiers, worked furiously around her. Their mission wasn't to win the battle, it was to survive long enough to execute the plan. Status on the decoy drones? She asked, her tone sharp. Almost ready, replied Lieutenant Parks, his hands flying over the console. They'll be online in 3 minutes. Elena nodded and turned to her communications officer. Patch me through to the other colonies. Priority message. Moments later, her voice was transmitted across the network. To all colonies, engage Phase 1. Draw their fire, buy us time. No heroics. Repeat, no heroics. We need to keep them chasing shadows. Across the sector, small teams sprang into action, deploying hastily constructed decoy drones and setting traps in the asteroid fields. The Velkers, unaware of the ruse, pursued what appeared to be fleeing human ships, only to find themselves ambushed by hidden mines or led into blind spots where human fighters waited in ambush. Admiral Vikos growled as reports of minor setbacks trickled in. "What is this nonsense? These aren't tactics, they're desperate stunts." "Desperate, perhaps," muttered his second-in-command, a younger Velker named Kazir. "But effective. They've neutralized 3 scout wings already." Vikos slammed his clawed hand on the console. "Enough of this. Order the fleet to converge on the planet's surface. If they wish to play games, we will crush them outright." On the ground, Alina saw the tactical display shift. The Velkers were committing a substantial portion of their fleet to the assault. Her lips curled into a grim smile. "They're taking the bait," she said, turning to her team. "Phase 2 is a go. Execute." Outside the bunker, hidden in the jagged terrain of Ganymede 7, a series of disguised anti-orbital cannons came to life. Built from repurposed mining lasers, they were far from traditional weapons, but their raw power and clever targeting algorithms made them formidable. As the Velker ships descended, the cannons fired in unison, beams of concentrated energy slicing through the void. The Dominion's wrath shuddered as one of the smaller frigates in its formation exploded, scattering debris across the Velker lines. Vikos snarled, his claws digging into the armrests of his command chair. "Impossible! They shouldn't have this kind of firepower." Kazir leaned closer to the console, analyzing the readings. "They're not conventional weapons. They've repurposed industrial equipment. Crude but effective." Vikos clenched his teeth. "Crude is all they are. Deploy the suppression fields and obliterate those cannons." On the surface, Alina's team watched as the cannons were targeted, one by one. The Velker suppression fields disrupted their power supplies, rendering them inoperable. Alina's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. "Good. Let them think they've won. Activate Phase 3. Beneath the surface of Ganymede 7, deep in abandoned mining tunnels, a team of hackers unleashed a barrage of cyber attacks on the Velker fleet. Using scavenged Velker tech, they had designed viruses capable of infiltrating and disrupting the Dominion's systems. As the viruses spread, Velker ships experienced cascading failures, shields flickering, targeting systems misaligning, engines stalling. On the Dominion's wrath, alarms blared as Vikos stared at the chaotic readouts. "What is happening?" Kazir's claws danced over his console. "We've been compromised. Their hackers have infiltrated our systems. It's sophisticated." "Humans? Sophisticated?" Vikos roared. "Purge the systems and reinitialize. Now!" But the damage was done. The Velker's advance faltered, and in the confusion, human strike teams launched precision attacks on key targets. Small, agile fighters targeted weakened Velker ships, their pilots exploiting every vulnerability the hackers created. In the chaos, several human escape pods drifted closer to the Velker fleet, seemingly forgotten. Alina monitored the situation from the bunker, her eyes sharp as she watched the pods approach their targets. "Detonation in 3, 2, 1. The pods, loaded with high-yield explosives, detonated simultaneously, ripping through the Velker formation. The flagship shuddered as the shockwave rocked its hull. Vikos stumbled but caught himself, his fury now mixed with a flicker of doubt. These aren't the actions of primitives," he muttered, his voice low. "They're more dangerous than we thought," Kazir said, his tone uneasy. "This is coordinated. Deliberate." Vikos growled, his pride battling with the cold reality unfolding around him. "Then we will show them what true power looks like. Deploy the superweapon." Kazir hesitated. "Admiral, it's not fully tested." "Deploy it!" Vikos bellowed. In orbit, a massive Velker device began to activate, its energy signature surging as it prepared to unleash devastation on the surface. Alina's eyes widened as the readings appeared on her console. "They're bringing out the big guns," she said, her voice tense. "Time to move to Phase 4. Her team scrambled, initiating the final part of the plan. Deep within the tunnels, a human-built quantum disruption array powered up, its systems humming with barely contained energy. It had been a gamble, cobbled together from salvaged Velker tech and human ingenuity, but it was their best shot. As the Velker superweapon reached critical charge, the disruption array activated, sending out a pulse that rippled across the battlefield. Velker systems flickered, then failed entirely. The superweapon's energy dissipated harmlessly, its once terrifying presence reduced to a harmless hulk. In the Dominion's wrath, Vikos stared at the blank screens, his expression one of pure disbelief. What have they done? Alina's voice crackled over the comms, calm and resolute. We warned you. Your arrogance blinded you. And now you've paid the price. Vikos snarled, his claws raking across the console, but there was nothing he could do. The once mighty Velker fleet was now a collection of disabled ships, their dominance shattered. And humanity, underestimated and cornered, had proven itself a force to be reckoned with. The Velker fleet was in chaos. Their once pristine formations fractured into disarray as ships floated powerless, their systems rendered inert by the quantum disruption pulse. Aboard the Dominion's Wrath, Admiral Vikos stared at the blacked-out tactical display, his claws twitching against the console. Report! He bellowed, his voice cutting through the cacophony of alarms. Kazir struggled to bring up any functioning systems. Admiral, the disruption pulse has shorted our primary circuits. Shields are down, propulsion is offline, and weapon systems are unresponsive. How is this possible? Vikos snarled, his golden eyes blazing. This is human technology? Kazir's hesitation spoke volumes. Not entirely. It appears to be a hybrid. They've adapted fragments of our own designs. Vikos slammed a fist onto the console, the sound echoing across the silent bridge. This is unacceptable. Humans adapting Velker technology? Impossible. They lack the sophistication. And yet, Kazir said, his voice measured. Here we are. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances as the weight of their predicament settled in. They were trapped in hostile territory, their fleet incapacitated, with no clear path to recovery. The only functioning system was their long-range communication array, and even that was flickering. On the surface of Ganymede 7, Captain Alina Thorne monitored the unfolding situation with a grim smile. The tactical display showed the Velker fleet immobilized, their formations now mere clusters of drifting hulks. Around her, her team worked tirelessly, running diagnostics on their own systems and preparing for the next phase of the operation. Status report? She asked. Lieutenant Parks glanced up from his console, his expression determined. The disruption pulse was more effective than anticipated. Velker's ships are dead in the water. They're attempting to reinitialize, but our cyber team is keeping them locked out. And our forces? Alina pressed. Minimal losses, Parks replied. Most of our fighters are returning to base for refueling and repairs. The decoy drones did their job. Alina nodded, her mind already working through the next steps. The Velkers were down, but they weren't out. If they regained control of their systems, the balance could shift in an instant. Humanity had to press the advantage. Get me a line to the Velker flagship, she ordered. There was a moment of silence as her communications officer worked to establish a connection. The line crackled to life, and Vikos's furious face appeared on the central screen, his golden eyes narrowing as he recognized her. Captain Thorne, he said, his tone dripping with disdain. I assume this disruption is your doing? You assume correctly, Alina replied, her voice steady. You were warned, Admiral. The Galactic Council cautioned you not to underestimate us. Vikos sneered. You think this minor victory matters? You've inconvenienced us, nothing more. The Dominion will recover, and when we do, you and your kind will be annihilated. Perhaps, Alina said coolly. But not today. Today, you're at our mercy. Mercy? Vikos barked a harsh laugh. Humans speaking of mercy. How quaint. Alina's gaze hardened. Admiral, you invaded our colonies, slaughtered our people, and disregarded every opportunity for diplomacy. Your arrogance brought you here, and your defeat is your doing. Now I suggest you reconsider your position before things get worse. Worse? Vikos' voice rose. Your primitive weapons are nothing compared to the might of the Velker Dominion. You've caught us off guard, I'll grant you that, but this is no victory. It's a delay. Alina leaned closer to the screen, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You misunderstand. This isn't just about defeating your fleet. It's about sending a message. You came to exterminate us, Admiral. Now you're the ones being taught a lesson. Before Vikos could respond, Alina gestured to her communications officer to cut the feed. The screen went dark, and she turned back to her team. They won't back down, she said. Not yet. But we've shaken them. That gives us time. Parks frowned. Time for what? To ensure they don't recover, Alina replied. We're not letting them regroup. Prepare the strike teams. We're taking the fight to their flagship. The room erupted into controlled chaos as her teams sprang into action. Alina quickly donned her combat gear, her movements precise and practiced. This wasn't just about strategy anymore. It was about execution. An hour later, Alina and her team were aboard a stealth shuttle, cutting through the asteroid field toward the Dominion's wrath. The Velker flagship loomed ahead, its massive silhouette dark against the faint glow of the distant sun. The shuttle's pilot maneuvered expertly, weaving through debris and evading what few scans the Velkers could still muster. Docking in 3, 2, 1. The pilot announced as the shuttle latched onto the flagship's airlock with a metallic clang. Alina led the team through the narrow corridors of the Velker's ship, their movements silent and coordinated. The disruption pulse had left most of the ship's systems offline, but they couldn't afford to be careless. Velker soldiers, even disoriented, were still dangerous. As they approached the central command deck, Alina raised a hand, signaling her team to halt. She gestured toward the door, her meaning clear, breach and clear. Two soldiers positioned charges on the door, and with a sharp nod from Alina, the explosives detonated, sending the heavy metal door slamming inward. The team surged into the room, weapons raised. Velker officers scrambled to react, their claws reaching for sidearms, but the humans were faster. Within moments, the command deck was secured, and Alina stood face to face with Vikos. The Admiral glared at her, his golden eyes burning with fury. You think this changes anything? It changes everything, Alina said, her tone cold. You've lost, Admiral. Accept it. Vikos bared his teeth in a snarl. The Dominion does not lose. Today it does, Alina replied. She stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. You thought you could crush us with brute force, but you failed to understand what makes humanity strong. It's not our weapons or our technology. It's our ability to adapt. To innovate. To survive. Vikos sneered. Spare me your speeches, human. Alina held his gaze for a long moment before turning to her team. Secure the bridge. Ensure they can't regain control of their systems. And send a message to the Galactic Council. The Velkers have been neutralized. For now. As her team moved to carry out her orders, Alina looked back at Vikos, her expression unreadable. You have a choice, Admiral. Surrender and live to rebuild your dominion, or cling to your pride and watch it burn. Decide quickly. Our patience isn't infinite. Without waiting for a response, she turned and strode from the room, her resolve unshaken. The Velkers had come to annihilate humanity, but they had underestimated the one force they couldn't defeat, the indomitable human spirit. The air aboard the Dominion's wrath was thick with tension as Alina's strike team worked methodically to dismantle what remained of the Velker flagship's command infrastructure. Sparks flew from disabled consoles as engineers sliced through circuits and planted overrides to ensure the Dominion couldn't regain control. Alina stood at the center of the chaos, her gaze fixed on the subdued Admiral Vikos, who sat bound in a corner, his golden eyes smoldering with fury. You won't hold me for long, Vikos growled, his voice low and venomous. When the Dominion learns of this humiliation, they will raise your planets to ash. Alina's expression didn't waver. The Dominion is finished here. Even if reinforcements arrive, your fleet is crippled, your systems are compromised, and the galaxy has seen your weakness. This isn't just your loss, Admiral. It's the end of the illusion of Velker invincibility. You think this will make your kind stronger? Vikos spat. It will only delay the inevitable. Humanity will fall, just like every other species that dared to challenge the Dominion. Alina leaned in, her voice quiet but sharp as steel. The inevitable is a funny thing, isn't it? You assumed our defeat was inevitable. And yet here we are. Maybe it's time to rethink what you call inevitable. Vikos snarled but fell silent, the weight of his defeat pressing against the walls of his pride. Around them, the human strike team was efficient and relentless. Lieutenant Parks approached Alina, his face streaked with sweat but lit with determination. Captain, the core systems are fully disabled. The ship's AI is offline, and we've extracted the data logs as planned. We've also uncovered their reinforcements' trajectories. Looks like they're 3 days out. Alina nodded. Good work, Lieutenant. Send the data back to command. It'll buy us time to fortify and regroup. Parks hesitated, glancing toward Vikos. What about him? She turned back to the Admiral, her eyes narrowing. He's our leverage now. The Velkers respect strength above all else. If they see their leader in chains, they'll know we're not to be trifled with. And if they don't care? Parks asked. Then we'll show them the same mercy they showed us, Alina said coldly. None. Before Parks could respond, the ship's emergency lighting flickered, and a low rumble echoed through the corridors. A voice crackled over the comms. Captain, we've got movement near the aft hangars. Velker soldiers are regrouping. Alina's jaw tightened. Parks, secure this deck. I'll take a team and intercept. She moved swiftly through the corridors with a hand-picked squad, their boots echoing against the cold metal. As they approached the hangar, the sounds of Velker weapons charging filled the air. Alina raised her hand, signaling the team to halt. She whispered into her comms. Flashbangs on my mark. The team threw the grenades into the hangar, and a blinding light filled the space, followed by a cacophony of shouts from disoriented Velker soldiers. Alina and her squad swept in, their weapons precise and devastating. The Velkers, though fierce, were scattered and uncoordinated. It wasn't long before the hangar was secured. One soldier, younger than the rest and visibly shaken, raised his hands in surrender. Alina aimed her weapon at him, her finger hovering over the trigger. The soldier trembled, his wide eyes pleading silently for mercy. For a moment, the tension hung heavy in the air. Drop it, Alina ordered, her voice firm but not unkind. The soldier complied, his weapon clattering to the ground. Tie him up and take him to the command deck, she told her team. As they moved to comply, Parks's voice came through her comms. Captain, we've got a bigger problem. The Velkers managed to get a signal out before we disabled their comms. Reinforcements will arrive sooner than expected, less than a day. Alina exhaled sharply, her mind racing. Understood. Prepare for immediate evacuation. Take whatever intel we can carry. We've done what we came to do. Returning to the command deck, she found her team preparing to leave, their expressions tense but resolute. Vikos sat unmoved, his presence a silent reminder of the danger still looming. You won't escape, he said as she approached. Reinforcements will hunt you down, and they will not make the same mistake I did. Alina regarded him for a long moment. That's where you're wrong. This wasn't just about this battle or your fleet. This was about showing the galaxy that you can be defeated. Your ships, your weapons, even your pride, it all bleeds. You overestimate yourself, Vikos sneered. Your defiance will only provoke the Dominion to greater wrath. And yet, Alina replied, her voice unwavering, we're still here. The evacuation was swift and precise. The strike team moved back to their shuttle, Vikos and the captured Velker soldiers in tow. As the shuttle detached from the Dominion's wrath, Alina looked back at the once mighty flagship, now a shadow of its former glory. The victory was hard-won, but it was only the beginning. The shuttle raced through the asteroid field, weaving between debris and evading detection. On board, Alina stood with her team, her gaze steady despite the weight of the moment. "Today, we've done more than survive," she said, her voice carrying across the small cabin. "We've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. And we've sent a message to the Velkers: they are not untouchable." The team responded with quiet nods, their exhaustion tempered by a fierce sense of accomplishment. Alina turned to Vikos, who remained bound and silent. "I hope you were paying attention, Admiral. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of the end for the Dominion." Vikos glared at her, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes. Doubt, perhaps. Or fear. As the shuttle approached the human fleet, Alina allowed herself a moment to breathe. The fight was far from over, but humanity had taken its first, decisive step toward not just survival, but defiance. And for the first time, the galaxy was beginning to understand what that truly meant.